Today our guest is Linda Evans Shepherd. And they approached and we made a terrifying discovery. We discovered that they were very angry and they were very drunk. Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today our guest is Linda Evans Shepherd. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Now, you have a new book out. Well, it's not brand new, is it? It's on When You Need a Miracle, How to Ask God
For the impossible.
For the impossible. Yeah. Well, you've had a lot of practice at that, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I wrote this book out of all that I've learned and all the mistakes that I've made and all of my struggles in crying out to God in difficult times.
Mm-hmm. And you have had a lot of those difficult times.
Yes, I have.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you want to tell us about a couple of them? I think most people who are familiar with you know about your handicapped daughter.
Right. 25 years ago, when she was only a baby, she was thrown out into the freeway during a very violent car accident and spent the next year of her life in coma. Of course, the doctor said she'd never wake up. And I said, you don't know coma from vegetative state, so we're just going to wait on the Lord. And they said, oh, well, we didn't know you were in denial. And they began to send in all kinds of interesting people to try to talk me down, so to speak. But I just believed that with God, and sure enough, when we put her newborn baby brother into her arms for the first time, that was the moment she woke up.
Yay.
And of course she is still disabled, but who doesn't have a little brain damage?
Well, yeah. Especially as we get older.
Let's not go there. But she is just a joy. She's 26 and a joy to have in her home. And her brother just graduated from college, and so that's a joy too.
That's true. Well, you believe that God still performs miracles today. Why do you believe that?
Well, we know from Psalms. The psalmist said God is a God who performs miracles. We also know He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And just because 100 years ago some seminary professors got together and agreed that God no longer performed miracles today doesn't make that statement correct.
That's right, because God says He does.
He says He does. He doesn't change. And everyone viewing knows of a time that God moved either in their life or in the life of someone they know.
That's right. He's done miracles in my life. He's done miracles in yours. Do you want to tell us a couple of those?
Well, I'd like to go back in time, back to when I was a 19-year-old girl, and I was a summer missionary, and I had a lovely young lady who had joined me for the week. We were teaching Vacation Bible School in the Mission Church. We were in the tiniest town in Texas called La Pryor, and it had just the freeway going through. I think most of the other roads were dirt roads. And I was at the little Baptist church there, and I had the kids. I was the youth director at the church, and so the kids had told me that they had wanted to pray for the drug runners in town. And they wanted to pray that we would get a chance to share our faith with them. Well, now that terrified me. Yeah. So now as I'm walking around town, because I didn't have a car that summer, I always was looking over my shoulders because, I knew who the drug runners were because every time they drove by in their trucks, they would say, there's one right there. So I knew who they were. And so here I am. Now it's Vacation Bible School week. We have our closing program on Friday night. And the young lady, a missionary to Mexico, and Raquel and I were standing in the parking lot, and we were waiting for our ride to take us back to the house where we were staying. And it was a beautiful, starry West Texas night. And as we stood under the stars, I looked down the street, and here came two of the drug runners walking toward us. Now, Raquel was new in town, and she didn't know about this prayer, nor did she know about the drug runners. So I turned to her and I said, Raquel, do you see those guys walking toward us? She said, yeah. I said, they're very dangerous. I said, let's just stand very still. And maybe those guys will walk by and they won't notice us. Like, right, they're not going to notice two 19-year-old women in the parking lot. So we stood as still as statues and we watched them as they walked past us. And then they turned around and I was shocked when they called me by name. Hey, Linda, you come over here. And I said, how about you come over here under the light? And they approached, and we made a terrifying discovery. We discovered that they were very angry, and they were very drunk. Mm-hmm. And they backed us over a car, and they said, you prove that God is real. And I gave a wonderful testimony. I said, I can only prove it by telling you he's in my heart. And they said, that's not good enough. We want you to prove God is real and prove it now. I'll never forget what I prayed. I closed my eyes for a moment and I said, God, it's your turn. And in that moment came the miracle. Suddenly, the starry sky was blotted by a dark cloud. Suddenly, the wind began to whip, and Raquel and I, we both had very long hair. The wind caught our hair, and it was standing straight up in the air in the wind. And the lightning began to flash, and the thunder began to boom. And Raquel shouted over the wind, see, that's God telling you he's real. And they ran one way, and we ran the other way. And all night, there were two 19-year-old girls in La Pryor, Texas, tucked away in a bedroom, sitting on the bed, looking at each other, going, wow, God is real.
Wow.
But, yeah, and that's a great prayer to pray. If you need a miracle, God, it's your turn.
Great story. Well, you say God can flip a tragedy into a miracle, mm-hmm. and your daughter is...
She's a great example of that.
Right, yeah.
I mean, nobody would pick having their daughter thrown out of a car in a tragic accident. And we know from the story of Joseph that what the enemy means for evil, that God means for good. And we know that all things work for the good of those who are loved and called according to his purpose. But what we forget is that God may have a deeper miracle in a great difficulty. For example, with my daughter, her grandmother had approached me and had said to me, you know, I had a terrible childhood, and that's why I don't believe in God. And I bet that if something terrible were to happen to you, let's say something happened to your baby Laura, I bet you would no longer believe in God. And I gulped and I said, boy, that would be difficult. But I would believe in God. And then the accident.
Wow.
And I became the only Bible that my mother-in-law would read. And today, we know that she's in heaven because God did a miracle in her life and brought her back to faith.
Yay. I have a friend who says, yay, God.
Yay.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, in the foreword of the book, Don Piper, the author of 90 Minutes in Heaven, states, some 21st century folks seem to think that miracles ended when the canon of the Bible was closed. That's what you were referring to earlier, right?
Yes.
And he says, what I don't agree with is the contention that God is not in the miracle business today. And how has your life circumstance, the different circumstances in your life, confirmed your belief that miracles are still happening today? Not just when you were 19, but right now.
Oh.
With all the problems that you have at your age with grown children, you know, one of them still handicapped.
Well, answered prayer, for one thing. I have just had a season of answered prayer, praying for my wonderful 24-year-old son, and watching the Lord move and move in his life to the point where he had to admit that God was indeed moving in his life. And he even said, do you know what my secret weapon is, Mom? And I said, what is it? And he said, I have a praying mom. And we need to be praying moms and dads and friends and neighbors. of our loved ones, because when we do pray, God answers those prayers.
Now, I know this doesn't relate to the book directly, but I wanted to mention your ministry, Right to the Heart, and the two big ministries you have through that. One of them is the Suicide Prevention Ministry.
Right. ThinkingAboutSuicide.com.
Tell us a little bit about what's happened with that ministry.
Well, it started out as a ministry called GodTest.com, and through that, and through the suicidal lanes of the internet, we saw 308,000 people come to faith over the years. And Google changed their search algorithm, and it kind of took us out of the traffic path. And so we, in an effort to get back into the traffic path of the suicidal lanes of the internet, we ended up creating a blog, and we do something called long tail keywords, and we try to figure out what desperate people are typing into the internet. People even type their prayers into the internet. And so we've created articles that will address and become the answers to the questions that they are typing into the internet, especially desperate and suicidal people.
And miracles are happening as a result of that ministry.
That's right. Sometimes all they need is a little confirmation. If they type in, God, do you even care? And then they find an article that says, yes, God does care about you. That's a miracle. And sometimes all it takes is just a little bit of encouragement for people to say, I will live another day. And if we can get them to live one more day, many of them will continue to live out their lives. And they'll look back. We get letters that say, thank God you were there when I almost ended my life. And I've been able to go on and have children and get married. And I have found happiness in my life. And if you hadn't been there, I would not have survived.
So, I mean, what a miracle that even that ministry is. And
it is.
And would you have started that ministry if you hadn't gone through much of struggles in your own life?
Absolutely not. And of course the reason why I started a suicidal ministry is because the accident put me in a place. One day I had 20 healthcare professionals, and they all told me there's no hope. Your daughter is a vegetable. And that one night, as I sat there with my daughter until 11:30 at night, I just felt the weight of hopelessness on my shoulder. And it seemed like a great idea for me to pull the plug from the wall of the machine that was keeping her alive. And it seemed like a great idea that I swallow a bottle of pain reliever. And it seemed like a great idea that we should escape the circumstances that I thought God had forgotten about or lost control of. I wasn't sure what had happened. But the reason why I didn't pull the plug on my daughter or myself is because I knew I had a new life inside of me. And I did not want to give up on that baby. And I did not want to give up on my daughter. And I did not want to give up on God. And I survived that night. And so I understand when people hit that moment in their life, that dark moment that they think they can't survive. And I'm here to tell you that if you're watching and you're like, I'm there is hope for you. God knows exactly where you are. And if you will just make the decision to trust Him, He is going to show you hope. He's going to show you a future. But I want to encourage you to finish the race that He has set before you. Don't end your life. Stay alive, live, and see what God can do with your life. And watch how God can take your circumstances, your difficulties, and turn them into a miracle too.
That's right. Now, praising God comes into miracles too. Can you explain a little bit about the importance of praise?
Praise is a wonderful weapon of warfare. And I think what it does, when instead of focusing on, oh no, here's the bad thing that I'm worried about, and we turn our attention up at that, it's almost like we're worshiping that thing. When all of our brain is focused on that negative difficulty. And then we switch channels and we go, but yet I will praise you. That's what David did. Mm-hmm. He would say, all my enemies are coming after me and they're going to kill me and slay me and all of these terrible things. But yet, oh yeah, I've got God. Yet I will trust in God. Mm-hmm. And he said that with God's help, he could leap over a wall. He could win a battle. Mm-hmm. And when we praise God, we change our focus from worshiping our difficulty to worshiping God. And that helps us to then trust him mm-hmm. and realize he's going to move.
Yeah. Well, when we really understand who he is, that he really is God.
Right.
And created the entire universe. I mean, it's not hard for him to do a miracle.
Yeah. Your Goliath is not bigger than God.
That's right.
David found that out too.
Yeah, exactly. And you found that out many times.
Many times. I find it out all the time. Every time I think, well, here is an interesting dilemma, then I think, oh yeah, God, it's your turn. And then he moves.
Yeah, he does. It's interesting what you say about the men in Scripture who brought their paralyzed friend to Jesus. How should we bring our loved ones to God in prayer?
You know, I hear people say, oh, I can't bother God with that. God is too busy answering all the prayers of the universe. So I can't go to God with that. But the thing is, God is beyond time. Mm-hmm. And when we go to him, all time stops and it's just you. Just like when the people brought the paralytic to Jesus and moved at the roof and dropped the man at his feet. It was as if all time stopped. And Jesus healed the paralyzed man because of the faith of their friends. When we bring our loved ones to Jesus, it's as if time stops. And God, who is beyond time, has all the time in the world just to sit with you and to listen to you say, could you help my son? Could you help my daughter? Could you help me? He's got the time, and he wants you to take the time because what he really wants from us is relationship.
That's right. Well, you end your book with what I think is a really strong statement. Sometimes our greatest miracles come when we surrender all, put our problem in God's hands, and determine to trust him no matter the cost. Thank you for your example in doing that, and thank you so much for being our guest. Where can people find you online?
You can go to my website, got2pray.com.
Okay. Linda Evans Shepherd and her book, When You Need a Miracle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Stand for claim.